Tonight, has a political mess become a crisis?
Jane Philpott's resignation clearly demonstrates a government in total chaos.
A star minister quits the Trudeau cabinet. Why her resignation might be a turning point. At Issue is here.
The only word I can come up with was horrible. It was horrible.
Disturbing details in the Leaving Neverland documentary. Will Michael Jackson's music ever sound the same?
I don't know that we need to make them mandatory if these other systems are in place.
And why the measles are back and what you can do to protect your family. Our health panel takes on the touchy subject of vaccination. This is The National.
For the Trudeau government, the SNC Lavalin story has been a gnawing threat. Bad news in daily increments, met with a shifting Liberal response. But today, the steady drip became a torrent. Jane Philpott says she's seen enough and quit cabinet, joining Jody Wilson-Raybould now as a former minister. Remember, Wilson-Raybould left cabinet just 3 weeks ago. She said she was relentlessly pressured as Attorney General to divert a criminal prosecution of SNC Lavalin. The Prime Minister called it a disagreement. Today, Jane Philpott called it something else. Tonight, we'll look at what her departure means. Katie Simpson will have reaction, and At Issue will assess the political damage. But David Cochrane kicks things off with a look at the resignation.
It started like a normal day for a cabinet minister, a public event to highlight government's use of artificial intelligence.
An era where government operations and the delivery of better government services is done through and with artificial intelligence technologies.
But what the crowd didn't know and what Philpott didn't tell them was that it would be her last event as a cabinet minister. Philpott's resignation letter makes it clear that she is quitting over the SNC Lavalin controversy. Sadly, I have lost confidence in how the government has dealt with this matter and in how it has responded to the issues raised. There can be a cost to acting on one's principles, but there is a bigger cost to abandoning them. Before her resignation went public, Philpott was asked about Jody Wilson-Raybould and pushed away all questions.
So I'm here today to celebrate AI Day, and I'm not going to be taking questions on those issues. Thanks.
Philpott and Wilson-Raybould are close friends and political allies. Philpott tweeted her support when Wilson-Raybould quit cabinet. Wilson-Raybould returned the favor when news of Philpott's departure broke.
Jane Philpott's resignation from cabinet clearly demonstrates a government in total chaos, led by a disgraced Prime Minister, consumed with scandal and focused only on his political survival.
Survival is an unsettled question, but function is undeniably hurt. Philpott was seen as one of Trudeau's most capable and trusted ministers, praised at the cabinet table for her judgment and effectiveness in health and Indigenous services before moving to Treasury Board. Once again, it left the Prime Minister to respond to a surprise resignation from a high-profile minister.
I know Ms. Philpott has felt this way for some time, and while I am disappointed, I understand her decision to step down, and I want to thank her for her service. I want to thank her.
His statement was interrupted by protesters, one of many disruptions at this rally about climate change. It's break week for Parliament, but no breaks for the Prime Minister.
I'm listening carefully to the various voices, testimonies, and opinions. There are more questions still to answer and more to be said in the coming days and weeks.
A lot more to come in the coming days. David, Trudeau left a lot unsaid there tonight about, starting with the future of Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Yeah, that's right. He did not address whether Jody Wilson-Raybould is going to be able to stay in caucus, a decision made far more complicated by Jane Philpott's resignation earlier today. What a senior government official tells me is that there's no urgency on that decision because Parliament is on break. It's not due back until the 18th of March when parliamentarians return for the budget. And because of that, there is no caucus meeting to worry about. So the timeline is when everyone is back together and when caucus is going to meet. So the week of the 18th, look for that as a timeline, at least for now, Rosie, on when they have to make that decision.
Okay, so this was an unexpected big day today, but Wednesday also expected to be a big day.
Yeah, another big chapter in this story. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister's former top advisor, Jerry Butts. He's going to testify at the Justice Committee, and the clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick, is going to reappear at the Justice Committee. And what another source tells us is that both men have copies of their communications with Jody Wilson-Raybould throughout the period in question in this controversy, and they believe that it will cast her version of events in a very different light. So stay tuned. This is not even close to being over.
Okay, David Cochran on this story again tonight in Ottawa. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jane Philpott's departure is resonating across the country, raising questions about the Liberal caucus. And for the opposition, it is a chance to exert maximum pressure. For the government, a chance to try and show some unity. Katie Simpson looks now at the reaction.
In full-on damage control mode, the Liberal MP sent to defend the government downplayed today's resignation.
Well, Jane Philpott's obviously highly respected inside and outside the government. As I understand it, she'll be staying in the Liberal caucus, and so I know all of us will be comforted by that fact.
But a senior source with direct knowledge of the situation tells CBC News there is a recognition within the Prime Minister's team of just how significant this development is. The source compared Jane Philpott's resignation to the Apollo 13 space mission, saying, "Houston, we have a problem." And the opposition knows it.
It looks like the Liberal government is in pure decomposition, an implosion. This is a loss of confidence in his person, in the Prime Minister himself.
It's time for every Liberal cabinet minister to ask themselves the same question Jane Philpott did. Is this what you got into politics for?
CBC News reached out to the remaining 33 members of the Prime Minister's cabinet. All 33 responded with statements of support for Justin Trudeau, including Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister Bill Morneau, and Labour Minister Patty Hajdu, who says her confidence remains untouched. But not all Liberals share that certainty. Ontario MP Selina Caesar-Chavannes, who announced she will not run in the next election, tweeted, "When you add women, please do not expect the status quo. Expect us to make correct decisions, stand for what is right, and exit when values are compromised." New Brunswick MP Wayne Long reiterated his call for a full and transparent investigation.
I'll just say that it's a big loss to Cabinet, and she's done such a great job and is really well liked around here.
In Philpott's Ontario riding, there appears to be early respect for her decision.
I do admire her, though, for taking the stand for her principles. I think it's important.
The Prime Minister desperately needs to stop the fallout from this story. But even those close to him admit there's no obvious path away from the controversy. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
Jane Philpott quitting the front bench, saying she's lost confidence in the government's handling of this SNC Levelland crisis. Another big blow, obviously, for the Prime Minister. So what do we make of the loss of two cabinet ministers to this affair? How deep a political crisis is this, and what is the damage? It's only Monday, but surely we have to bring At Issue together to break this all down. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Paul Wells joins us in Ottawa tonight. Okay, let's start with, I think, my biggest question I had when I heard the news. Is this resignation of Jane Philpott in some ways perhaps more damaging than Jody Wilson-Raybould? Chantal.
Well, it does pile up. And this resignation from a well-respected, well-liked minister who did not have a dog in the SNC-Lavalin fight comes at a time when Canadians are trying to make up their minds about how damaging they think this saga should be to the Prime Minister. And she seems to be saying, well, whatever you're thinking, pause and reflect on the fact that I, a cabinet minister of talent, can't find his version credible enough to defend.
Andrew, what did you make of it?
I agree with everything that was just said there. This is one of the absolute mainstays of this government, the most universally admired, most competent minister, and another minister other than Jody Wilson-Raybould. So it is validating of a lot of the things she was saying. This was not a resignation to spend more time with her family. I mean, this resignation was absolutely directly aimed at the Prime Minister, at the government, declaring no confidence in the Prime Minister, and specifically on this question of the interference in the prosecution. It will, I think, resonate with a lot of Liberals. You can't dismiss this as either some people are trying to say that it was just sour grapes on Jody Wilson-Raybould's part, or that it's partisanship, the Conservatives going after them. This is an absolute pillar of the Liberal establishment saying this.
And it would be disappointing for a lot of people too, Paul, given what many people think of Jane Philpott.
A lot of people had started to talk themselves into various reasons why Jody Wilson-Raybould's departure could be blamed on Jody Wilson-Raybould. One MP quickly apologized after blaming it on her dad. As Oscar Wilde said about losing parents, one is tragedy, but two starts to look like carelessness. It's possible to imagine that if the Prime Minister had responded to Jody Wilson-Raybould's departure with some kind of grace, some kind of apparent awareness of current events, with anything but a solid week of talking points, a news conference about moon exploration, that maybe Jane Philpott could have been persuaded that some of these concerns were being taken seriously. But he didn't, so she didn't.
I want to read one part of the letter. I mean, there's lots of parts that struck me, but one that I felt was very much directed, maybe at the Prime Minister, but certainly at Cabinet. She writes at one point, "But I must abide by my core values, my ethical responsibilities and constitutional obligations. There can be a cost to acting on one's principles, but there is a bigger cost to abandoning them." I mean, she doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room here for the Prime Minister, does she, Chantal?
No, but even if she'd left him more, so far he's failed to take up any of the wiggle room he's had over the past 3 weeks to give a serious accounting of what went on, what his stake actually is, not in little bits and pieces and not in talking points, to the Canadian people. And what this resignation tells us is that it seems that he wasn't any more convincing, or maybe he didn't even bother, to his full cabinet, the first people that he would have explained this to, because if Justin Trudeau had come up with a rationale that people felt they could defend, maybe we wouldn't be working tonight discussing this on a panel.
So how damaging is it then, Andrew, to his leadership? Because I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, we can have conversations about the deferred prosecution agreements and all that, but what about his leadership and what this tells us about it?
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see ultimately where Cabinet goes in this. In the short term, it sounds like they're rallying around it, but I think they ought to be asking themselves why. Does Jane Philpott know something they don't know? Probably not. Probably she knows exactly what they know. It was enough to move her to say, what I have seen and what I've heard was intolerable. I cannot have confidence in this government. I would be really interested to hear from cabinet ministers why they differ with her on this. What specifically gives them confidence in this government, gives them confidence in the way they've handled this whole issue? That she does not. I think a lot of people will be wondering why their judgment is superior to hers on this.
Paul was in enthusiastic agreement there, Paul.
Yeah, look, it's time to quit with the talking points. It's time for someone in this government who still believes in staying in this government to talk to Canadians as though they're Canadians, as though they're fellow citizens. Jane Philpott's comment about her constitutional obligations sounded to me like a purposeful echo of this sentence from the Open and Accountable Government Handbook, the ethical how-to manual that the Prime Minister told every minister to read and take to heart. The Attorney General is bound by the constitutional principle that the prosecutorial function be exercised independently of partisan concerns. And then the Prime Minister sent 10 people to warn Jody Wilson-Raybould about the elections. That's a direct contravention of what he told his Attorney General was her duty. No wonder ministers are quitting.
So yeah, go ahead, Chantal. Yeah.
I can't think of a time when a minister has resigned in solidarity with another minister. And that is why it goes to Justin Trudeau's leadership. Because this isn't about some minister being caught in a conflict with the Prime Minister as the second in command or the partner of the minister who is at the center of the controversy. This is and this isn't over a major direction of the government. So it does go back to, if Jane Philpott doesn't feel comfortable defending Justin Trudeau, what are voters supposed to make of that? And I watched, and we all did, the Prime Minister just now, and he doesn't seem to see that is what people are seeing.
And think of what she is giving up. This wasn't somebody who was on the way down. This is a rising star in the cabinet. People talk about her as potentially a future finance minister. This is a major sacrifice she has made on a point of principle. I'll just say that's a good day for democracy when people are willing to do that.
What does he do, though? So you all agree there's damage. You all agree that this is unprecedented. Is there anything he can do to undo this or to scale it back? Or, I don't know, Paul, beyond, I guess, saying something is what you want him to do, but is there anything he can do?
Tonight in Toronto Danforth, we saw what he's going to try and do. At a climate change rally, he said, we need to keep in mind the bigger picture. It's these issues, these things that seem to preoccupy Jane Philpott are important, but we need to keep in mind the bigger picture. That's eerily reminiscent of what his man Matthew Bouchard told Jody Wilson-Raybould. I know you care about the independence of the prosecutorial function, but we need to win elections. The Trudeauvian, I was going to say the Liberal, but no. Justin Trudeau's version of appealing to principle is to say, look, never mind this, we're in an election year.
Andrew,
I would submit that he should do something else than that.
Okay, but there's also, by appealing to looking at the big picture, and I think it's a fair argument to use, look at the big picture. Do you want to throw all this out, throw the baby out with the bathwater? Yeah. The problem is that as this crisis continues to escalate and he fails to rise to the challenge of taking control of the narrative and talking to people about it, there will come a time when people who believe in the big picture will say, you are in the way of the big picture, Prime Minister.
Right.
What he has to realize is that this is not a question of communications or strategy. That either what Ms. Wilson-Raybould said is true, in which case he needs to come clean and explain and apologize and everything else, or it's not true, in which case he has to show evidence why it's not true. But he can't just sort of strategize or communicate his way out of this. And I fear that if he was aware of that, he wouldn't be in this problem in the first place.
Well, presumably, though, Paul, the response comes from Jerry Butts on Wednesday.
He's not the Prime Minister.
No, but still, presumably that's where the rebuttal comes from.
I mean, what's Jerry Butts going to say? That Jody Wilson-Raybould was confused in her activity, that sometimes she seemed to be motivated one way, sometimes by another? That's great. But, I mean, she's gone now, and the Prime Minister's still the Prime Minister. And members of his caucus are still saying, there was one on Vashti Kaplis' show today saying that SNC Lavalin is entitled to a deferred prosecution agreement.
Which is really not a word Liberals want to use.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is why they stick to talking points, because when they actually talk, it sounds like that.
Chantal, last word to you then on whether you think Wednesday will change anything for them.
I know that they believe that. I think all that it will change for them is to leave the Prime Minister no other option but to go to bat more seriously or to take himself out of play.
Okay, everybody. Thanks. Our first of many At Issues this week. Appreciate it. Reminder, you can subscribe to the At Issue podcast. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, and our website, cbcnews.ca/The National. A lot can happen between now and Wednesday, Andrew, but we're going to try and just hold off until Wednesday when At Issue will reconvene when Jerry Butts gives his testimony. Meanwhile, Andrew, you're following a developing story out of BC tonight.
Yeah, Rosie, 2 police officers were rushed to hospital today after a hit and run in Burnaby. Tonight, they're still looking for the driver of that car. And the officers, they're recovering. Briar Stewart spoke to a witness who saw it happen.
This video was taken just moments after the officers were struck. Both are part of the canine unit and had been in the area to train their dogs.
And I saw a white flash, and then literally the one officer went flying in the air. He flew 15 feet.
He believes that white flash he saw was the speeding car that hit the officers. That same vehicle had been reported to police shortly before the accident.
Just prior to the collision, a call came in of a possible impaired driver. Before they could engage the suspect vehicle, it fled.
The police officer felt it wasn't safe to pursue the car because it was driving into oncoming traffic. A few blocks around the corner, that same car ran into the other officers. The car then sped away while people inside the nearby businesses rushed out to help.
One of the officers was very badly injured. I said, do you need help or do you need anything? So that's it. What did they say? They said they were crying.
One of the officers is from the RCMP. They say he was seriously injured but is expected to recover. The other is from the Abbotsford Police Department. He's expected to be released from hospital tonight. As for the speeding car, police later found it abandoned. It had been reported stolen. The police investigation is continuing. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Burnaby.
Here are some of the other stories we're watching tonight. Prime Minister Trudeau is dismissing allegations by Beijing that two Canadians were working together to steal state secrets.
It is unfortunate that China continues to move forward on these arbitrary detentions. We will continue to stand up for these Canadians.
Chinese authorities took Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor into custody last December, initially accusing them of endangering national security. Their detention came just days after Canada arrested Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou at the request of the U.S. China's latest move comes just days after her extradition crossed another procedural hurdle. And that is Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido being greeted by throngs of supporters when he arrived back in Venezuela today. There was some worry he wouldn't be allowed to return or maybe arrested upon arrival. That's because he broke a court-imposed travel ban to tour Latin American countries in search of support for his campaign to oust President Nicolas Maduro. In a tweet, Guaido thanked Canada and other countries for helping him return. He is recognized by most Western nations, Canada included, as Venezuela's legitimate head of state.
Still ahead tonight, what's behind a spike in transgender teens seeking treatment in Canada?
Also, we ask our panel of doctors about the consequences of a measles comeback in Canada and how to protect your family.
First, though, the disturbing new allegations of abuse at the hands of Michael Jackson. Can you or should you separate the man from the music?
As Michael started doing these sexual acts, he started talking to me about God brought us together.
How do you see that and then decide, no, I could just happily dance to Remember the Time?
We were young and innocent then. Do you remember?
He told me if they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail.
Their stories are damning, disturbing, and untested by the law. And today, they're causing some soul searching. In part one of HBO's Leaving Neverland, which aired last night, James Safechuck and Wade Robson tell of being drawn in by Michael Jackson's star power as boys, then groomed and abused.
He said I taught him how to French kiss, and then it moves on to oral sex.
They describe specific acts and where they allegedly happened, including in a closet at Neverland Ranch, where a series of bells would warn of anyone approaching. And there's more to come. Part two and a special Oprah interview airing tonight. So, faced with that disturbing portrait, some Jackson fans are jumping to his defense, pointing out that his accusers swore when Jackson was still alive that he did nothing wrong. But as Eli Glasner shows us, others are grappling with how to separate the man from the music, or whether they should even try.
Radio host and musician Odaria Williams still remembers being a little kid in Winnipeg when his dad brought home the VHS tape of the Thriller music video.
Wow. And I just played it over and over and over again. And I told myself I want to be in entertainment when I grow up one day.
But after watching the documentary, his feelings about Jackson have changed.
The only word I can come up with was horrible. It's horrible.
Part of his struggle is Jackson's impact as an artist.
The drums on Thriller are still unmatched. And the future of music together in one album is unprecedented.
Extraordinary.
This music fan and writer says Jackson was a part of her life for as long as she can remember.
You go to a party, you hear his music, you know the steps, you have this whole kind of vocabulary of motion that he created. Hello, Wade.
After watching Leaving Neverland, she's removing Michael Jackson from her phone and her life.
There's no way to not hear the music very differently. If you think of one of his big hits, The Way You Make Me Feel, And there's that line where he says, "Ain't nobody's business but mine and my baby." You know, and you suddenly hear that, you think about the secrecy that he, existed in, and how there were this sense of these very two different Michael Jacksons. And how do you see that and then decide, no, I could just happily dance to Remember the Time.
On Hollywood Boulevard, fans aren't ready to mute Michael.
If the music makes you happy, then why not? Don't forget about the other stuff, but the music's making people happy, so yeah, keep playing it, man.
Music to the ears of the Jackson estate, which has already launched a lawsuit against the HBO network for $100 million. This isn't the first time the public has heard similar allegations of child molestation. The claims began in 1993, but the world was different then.
Now we live in the Me Too era. And now I, for one, am happy to hear that male victims of sexual abuse are being believed.
And this investigative reporter says the story is far from finished.
Do you expect to hear from more victims?
Yes, I do. I predict that we will hear from many more victims.
I want to be able to speak the truth.
But, she adds, it takes a long time for victims of child molestation to come to terms with what they've experienced. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
And up next on The National, our panel of doctors goes in-depth on the resurgence of measles in Canada, a disease that had been wiped out 20 years ago. First, though, the passing of a man whose acting career spanned more than 30 years, and it all began as a teen heartthrob. Luke Perry played Dylan McKay, the cool and conflicted rebel of Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah, let's do lunch.
That show was a phenomenon in the 90s, yet Perry could take a joke at his own expense.
Look, there must be something I can do on the show. Please, for Mom's sake.
After a couple of modest movie hits, Perry left the main cast of 90210 to chase more film roles. They didn't exactly pour in. He spent years doing bit parts, voice work, direct-to-DVD movies, occasionally landing more nuanced roles, like in HBO's John from Cincinnati. But then, 2 years ago, everything turned around.
By the side later?
He was cast as Archie Andrews' dad in Riverdale, that edgy reboot of the Archie comics series, which is now on hiatus. This summer, he will posthumously appear in Quentin Tarantino's new movie. Luke Perry, 52 years old, died today of complications after a massive stroke he suffered last week. Measles in Canada is exceptionally rare, eradicated since 1998, meaning cases here come from other countries. But this year, it came and it spread. In January, a confirmed case in a BC hospital, then a second and a third. By March, there were at least 15 confirmed cases in British Columbia alone. And down south, it was worse. In just the first 2 months of this year, the US has seen more than 150 confirmed cases. And consider Europe, more than 80,000 cases in 2018. According to the World Health Organization, that's the largest outbreak the continent has ever seen. Worldwide, there's been a 50% increase in measles cases between 2017 and 2018. And here's the rub. Among toddlers in Europe who got sick, 80% were unvaccinated. This for a disease that's been vaccine preventable since 1963. So tonight, our panel of doctors on the consequences.
I'm Danielle Martin, family physician and vice president at Women's College Hospital.
I'm Lennox Wong, pediatrician and chief medical officer at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto.
I'm Samir Sinha. I'm a geriatrician and the director of geriatrics at Sinai Health System and the University Health Network.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Danielle, I'll start with you. I mean, how alarmed should we be that measles is kind of making this comeback?
We should be alarmed, and I think also we should be disappointed because that we have so many very significant health issues that need to be addressed in this 21st century. Why would we revisit a disease that is entirely preventable?
Right. So I mean, according to StatsCan, the measles vaccination rate for kids was around 89% in 2015. So, Samir, I mean, what is the fear here that this could actually take hold in Canada and then spread in a more Broadway domestically? I mean, is it getting to that point?
Well, measles is so contagious. It's one of the most contagious diseases out there, right? So anybody who's not vaccinated, if they come in contact with someone with measles, they have a 90% chance of getting infected. And as Daniel was saying, right, this was totally preventable.
And Lennox, why is it so dangerous, though? Because there are, I mean, as I outlined earlier, there are hundreds of thousands of cases of measles every single year around the world. I mean, why are we so alarmed about a dozen, even 100 cases in Canada if it got to that point?
So this is a disease where there might be hundreds of thousands of cases. There are hundreds of thousands of deaths. So it can leave you dead. It can leave you with permanent disability. At the very least, it gives you a terrible, terrible illness that 1 in 10 times is going to land you in the hospital for a hospitalization. Hugely dangerous.
So the vaccine itself, safe?
Safe,
Yes,
and it's been around for a really long time. I mean, this is not a newfangled thing that we don't know very much about, and we're still learning. Like, it's been around a long time, and in fact, you know, as we all know, there have been questions raised about the safety and efficacy, causing us to do even more research and double down on our scientific understanding of how safe and how effective it truly is. And so, actually, it is without a doubt a safe vaccine.
Talk to me about the efficacy of the MMR vaccine. So mumps, measles, rubella. How effective is it?
So most people will get 2 doses as a child, starting about a year of age, and either a year and a half or 4 to 6 years of age after that. And that vaccination in and of itself offers upwards in the 95% range of protection against measles.
For some people who are older in our society, they may have only gotten one vaccine when they were really young. So we recommend...
Right, and not gotten the second booster.
Yeah, the booster, if you will. And so that's why we recommend that if you're not sure what your status is, you know, talk to your family doctor. Go and see them and say, look, you know, am I up to date? You know, should I be getting the vaccination? And are there any other vaccinations? Because 88% of Canadians that were polled recently felt that they actually are up to date on all the vaccinations, and only 3% actually were. So it's not just even about measles. There are other vaccine preventable diseases out there that we are not protecting ourselves against, and I think this is what frustrates us. It's such a waste. It's such a waste when you see people suffering.
Right, so let's talk about that, right? So there was a survey done for Health Canada, this was in 2017, where 1 in 3 parents expressed having some kind of doubt or concern about vaccinating their child. And then there was something like 1 in 10 who said they had actually refused or delayed getting some vaccines for their children. I mean, Lennox, you're nodding your head. I mean, do you see that vaccine hesitation in your own practice?
Yeah, so the World Health Organization has said that vaccine hesitancy is one of our top 10 health concerns in 2019. It's a huge concern. It's a worldwide concern, and we do see this in our day-to-day practice as well. That 10%, they're not completely doubting vaccines. They need a little more information. They need to be convinced. They need to hear about how well vaccines work and also the terrible diseases that they prevent.
But that's an interesting point too, right? That there's a spectrum of people who are hesitant about vaccines. There's the anti-vaxxer movement, which we hear an awful lot about, but there are people who simply, as you say, just have questions, are unsure. I mean, how do you even begin to approach?
So that number of people who are really truly anti-vaccine is very, very small, as Lennox has said. And I think that we do better to focus on the overwhelming majority of people who actually have a question or two, often a very reasonable one, that can be cleared up in a simple conversation, and then we can move on. And if you think about the hundreds of millions of lives that have been saved over time, you know, globally, since the advent of vaccines, you know, it pretty much equates to the time when we first separated the sewage from the water. Like, these are the big moments in human history when we actually made a difference in people's life expectancy. One of those is the advent of vaccination, and so we cannot lose that ground.
Can you get people on board one conversation at a time? Can you combat all the bad information out there with just this equal onslaught of good information? Because to date, I don't know how effective that's been.
No, I think part of it is, you know, I think my colleagues, I think all of us are realizing that we need to put a bit more emphasis in reassuring folks, because again, when you start hearing little bits and pieces, there may be some doubt in your mind. And so I do make it a routine part of my practice, especially for older people in Canada who are often, well below their vaccination rates. Most people think that vaccines are just for kids, but we need them throughout the life course, and especially when we're older as well.
And that's the case in your practice, though. I mean, particularly with older people, where they would say what? That either they forgot or that they were complacent? Or
I mean, the World Health Organization has, said the big 3 reasons why people often won't get vaccinated are, 1, because of cost, right? If there's a cost associated. That's why we've done a really good job in Canada making these essential vaccinations pretty much free and publicly available. Often it's also convenience, right? If it's not conveniently available, you work late and you can't get to the office during the hours. Can we make sure it's available? That's why many provinces around the country, we can get these vaccinations at your pharmacy as well.
Let me jump in, because making vaccinations free, that's one thing.
Huge.
Last time, I remember I had you guys here on the panel. We were talking about the influenza vaccine, the flu shot. And I asked you a question about whether that ought to be mandatory. And so I'm going to ask you the same question, but as it relates to measles, as it relates to the whole suite of vaccines that are out there, ought they to be mandatory?
I don't know about mandatory. We had this debate earlier on. What does mandatory really mean? I mean, at the very least, we need to be actually reporting so that we understand who is and isn't vaccinated, and we need to be putting in place systems in order to make sure that people don't fall behind by accident or because they don't realize or understand. We could start with that. I think we could have a healthy debate about mandatory, and actually, there's a wide span of opinions about that. I don't know that we need to make them mandatory if these other systems are in place.
I do want to put that question to you. I mean, you come across parents and kids all the time.
Now, I'd like to say that they're necessary. This is something that your child needs, because that's the truth. There's a very, very few children that can't get vaccinated, whether they have some sort of very particular illness. Very, very few. Vast majority of children, pretty much all, it's necessary.
Well, I think the other part is, I think a lot of people who don't get vaccinated, they think that, well, it's like not wearing a seatbelt. I'm only harming myself. But we often equate not getting vaccinated to drunk driving, right? Because if you actually don't get vaccinated, what's really serious here is that not only do you potentially put yourself at harm, but other people who couldn't get vaccinated. That's why we need this concept of herd immunity. By my getting vaccinated, I'm helping to protect you, and you getting vaccinated helps protect me. And I think when people start realizing the importance of why we all need to do this, when we can do this, then that's where I think it starts reinforcing the necessity behind it.
And to Samir's point, it's a lifelong commitment, the commitment to preventing illness. One of the most important ways that we do that is when you go to see your family doctor to get your blood pressure checked or have your mammogram or your pap smear or get your cholesterol checked, you should be having a conversation every time about, are my vaccines up to date? Do I need a tetanus shot? Do I need a pneumonia vaccine? Do I need a shingles vaccine? Because the science is evolving, and there are new vaccines that are available all the time. And all of us through our lifespan are going to need to be continually committing to preventing disease and illness in ourselves and, in our community.
Danielle, Lennox, Samir, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next on The National, the gender transition of an Ottawa teen who never felt like he was a girl and made sure his parents understood his situation was dire.
I remember as a small child, I would pray to God, like, why'd you make me the wrong way? Can I please wake up and just be the right way?
Transgender issues have burst into mainstream awareness with incredible speed. It's not quite 4 years since Caitlyn Jenner, the formerly male Olympic champion, came out as a trans woman. Popular TV shows have also heightened trans visibility. But these issues get much more real and much more urgent when it's your kid who says, I'm not the gender you think I am, and I'm in terrible pain. This is happening more and more. Last year, the BC Children's Hospital received 240 referrals of kids struggling with their gender identity. Just 5 years earlier, it was 20. Doctors are wary about putting underage patients through hormone treatments and irreversible surgery, but they're also keenly aware of the torment felt by some trans kids. One Ontario survey showed that 49% of trans youth had considered suicide in the previous year, and 19% had attempted it. So let's put some real faces to those numbers. An Ottawa family had to search their souls when their young daughter came to them in crisis. They now accept that child as their son. The CBC's Jen Beard shows us how they all got there.
You know, just shape my body a little bit more masculine.
When Cian Olszewski was 13 years old, he shocked his parents when he told them he didn't want to be a girl anymore.
Like, I've known my whole life, like ever since I was very little. And I remember as a small child, like I would pray to God, like why'd you make me the wrong way? Like, can I please wake up and just be the right way?
Cian was born Caitlin, a twin sister to Kirsten. But from his earliest memories, he felt trapped in the wrong body, living the wrong life.
It's like I didn't want to live like as Caitlin anymore because it wasn't who I was.
Cian was so distressed, he was cutting and burning himself.
I had been in this kind of dark place for a while, and it was always like, it's either gonna like end here or I'm gonna tell people who I am. And I kind of just figured, like, if worst case scenario I'm ending things, I might as well tell people who I am first, like, and see how it plays out.
And then one night he left his parents a note that had taken him an entire year to write.
All I'm asking is for a chance to be who I really am. You are the best parents ever, and I love you very much. Thank you for reading this. And it says, love your son. Sorry.
I think we both kind of looked at each other and said, well, okay. Yeah. And then we're like, my God, he's going to have a difficult time.
With the support of his parents, Cian started treatment at this gender diversity clinic at CHEO, the Children's Hospital in Ottawa. Now 17, he's had hormone therapy and had his breasts and uterus removed. Cian is part of a spike in demand for transitioning from teens around the world. Last year, 189 children were referred to the clinic. A decade ago, there were only 1 or 2. Doctors don't know why.
We really don't know. I think there's much more knowledge, much more awareness in the community in general about gender diversity.
The clinic works closely with the teens, questioning them over and over again to make sure transitioning is what they really want.
Is it possible that we make a mistake? Yes, it's possible to make a mistake. Do I lose sleep over that sometimes? Yes, I lose sleep over that sometimes. But that just increases our resolve to go back and look at it again and again and again and again, and try to be as solid as we can at any point in time that we're doing the right thing.
But Fetter warns delaying treatment is also risky. Many turn to self-harm or drug abuse if they feel trapped in the wrong body.
So it's not a benign decision to wait. And parents often say that. We support our kid, but they're only 15. Let's wait till they're 21. That's not a benign decision. That sort of strategy also is fraught with potential negative outcome.
Cian's parents feel strongly that they needed to support their son or risk losing him.
I've heard horror stories. We've read things where parents almost disown their child because they came out and said that. You absolutely can't do that. I mean, you're going to drive your child to suicide if you do that.
Now, Cian's got a new life with his girlfriend by his side.
Like, if you knew him before, you could tell that he was like masculine and like
never acted
like a girl. Yeah, like it was not a big surprise, but I was just ready to like support him, and I didn't know that I was gonna like fall in love with him or anything.
Yeah. This is 100% who I am. And the thing is, like, I was a guy before I transitioned. I've been a guy my whole life. It's just making the outside match what's inside.
Jen Beard, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead tonight on The National, the intrepid CBC reporter who hiked 7 kilometers for a story on a Yukon ice cave and then got the perfect shot.
Behind CBC News at the Kluwani Ice Cave.
Perfect timing. The moment is next.
Hi, I'm Sarah McLachlan, host of the 2019 Juno Awards. Join me for the biggest night in...
The Junos, March 17th on CBC.
Am I out of time already?
The Great Canadian Baking Show is coming back to CBC, and we're looking for Canada's best amateur bakers. Apply now. Go to cbc.ca/Great Canadian Baking Show to enter.
In television news, it is all about getting the shot, the perfect scene, the perfect backdrop, a way to tell the story, give it context, bring it to life. So when CBC White Horse reporter Philippe Morin was recording his on-camera for a story on a melting ice cave and glacier, he got the shot, a 1 in a million shot. And that's our moment.
Holy shit! The glacier is as much a story about social media as anything else. Only a few people knew about it until quite recently. It's being discovered just as it's starting to fall apart. That was the reason I was there to do a story in the first place, was to have a look and see if I could chronicle some of the deterioration of this cave. I was saying, everyone knows it's going to collapse sooner or later, but some hikers are here to have a look while they still can. And just like a period at the end of a sentence, at the very moment I stopped talking, I heard a loud crash and turned around. I was stunned. It was just the perfect illustration of what I was there to talk about, and it just happened right at that timing that I could have never planned out. It's just a 1 in a million shot that is one, I think, in my time at CBC North, that's certainly a memorable stand-up.
Yeah, also, he walked 7 kilometers to get that on camera, and geologists say that this is just going to keep happening. It's going to keep deteriorating and melting and doing what it did there.
And while he was walking his 7 kilometers, he was thinking about a stand-up, and he told us that he wanted to go into the cave because he knows it echoes, and so when he said his name and CBC News, it news. But then he heard that the sound can make the cave collapse, so he's very glad he did not go.
I mean, but that's important, right? I mean, it's so structurally brittle, according to Yukon Search and Rescue, that a loud noise could set the whole thing off. So I was just shocked that after he said his sign off and then the thing collapsed, when he said "holy S," that the whole thing did come down.
Yes, I also heard that word too. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yes.
Hey, that's the National for this March 4th. Have a good night.
Good night.